On this episode of Carnage, we need to get a rear end in our twin turbo LS Ute. We made a hole and now we have to fill it, and we have to put a rear end under our Ute floor. We've also got to put a few other things under here. We've got to do the track locator, the anti-roll bar, the coilovers, and most importantly, we've got to put some wheels under this thing so we can get our Ute rolling again, and so we can get it finished, get that twin turbo engine up the front and go make some power and run some numbers. That's what it's all about. So, a lot of work to happen this episode. If you watched last episode, you'll know that we've got our diff housing pretty much ready to go. A couple more welds to happen on it, but this episode is going to be all about getting our connection points in there, doing our 4-link bars, track locator, as I said, spring mounts, all that stuff, get it rolling again. So by the end of this episode, we should see this thing back on 4 wheels, and it should look glorious. So let's get started.
So all of our builds like this, obviously we run an ARB in them. Now, being a radial car, we run a 6-inch arm on our ARB, which gives us more travel in the suspension. For everyone who doesn't understand why we need more travel in the suspension on a radial car, we like them to separate, especially on a good track. So if we go to a 6-inch arm, it will allow us to separate further and basically top our shock out versus running a 5-inch arm on this car. Now, we rang a good friend of mine, Darren Mood, and ordered an ARB. We had it down here the next day. So this is the Mood Motorsport 6-inch ARB kit, which we're going to pull apart. We'll measure our lengths up in the car now. We'll 3D scan the back of it so we can actually make a 3mm fish plate, which will stitch to the floor, stitch to the inside of the tubs, and that's where we'll pull our coilover mounts from. And we'll also pull our ARB mount off of that as well. So that'll be stitched into a chassis rail, stitched into the floor, and stitched into the side of the tub. So when we order these kits, they all come pre-packaged like this with all your heim joints, left and right hand thread, all of your ends which weld into the bar, all of your weld-ons, bracketry for the top of the diff, so if we don't want to make our own, it's just a generic bracket to weld on. Now this style actually bolts to the side, so as I was saying, instead of it clamping up underneath a chassis rail or on top or anything, we'll make a plate where this actually bolts to it and through it, and then this is our billet arm. So obviously you'll see how all of this goes together, but these are our billet arms, which in turn will end up welding over the top of this, which will create our anti-roll bar.
So we're here playing with the street machine car again. We're doing the final touches now of the diff. We need to install an ARB bar and our shock bracket, which will be another bar that runs across the top. Now we don't want to come off the tubs, because it's going to be thin sheet metal. So we're going to have to go off the rails and connect off the tubs as well, as we've done a false floor on it, so we can sit everything high so we can get the full length of the shock that we have. That's the reason we've gone through the floor, and that's the reason why the bar, or both of the bars, are going to be up above that level. So I'm now going to scan the car and design some sheet metal to give all that heaps of strengths and structural integrity, so we can mount all our bar work off it. We'll be drawing all our bars and everything to make sure that we get a full swing of everything as well. So we're not putting in the car and going, oh, we've limited to 80% of the travel of the ARB or anything like that, and we don't have to make modifications later on. Let's get to scanning and then we'll draw everything up and get it done. So we've just finished scanning off the car. Now we can input all this data into our CAD software, start designing all our bracketry for it, and quickly mock up all the plates we need to add all the strengths we need for all the bars and everything we talked about before. So let's get onto that, and we can start draw everything up in CAD, and then we start setting off for the plasma cutter, start printing it all, sanding it all down, tacking it up, making sure that everything I've done's right, which, you know, hopefully most of the time's right, but we'll go from there and we'll get into it.
So what we're doing here is we 3D scan everything, again with our 3D scanning, but the reason we do this is nothing's ever dead square in these cars, so it allows us to make everything symmetrical, see what the product's going to look like before we actually put it in. With a car like this, normally we would have built a subframe for the back out of chromoly and bent it all up, folded it up, drawn it in our other CAD software. Now, because tubs have already been done in this car and everything's already sitting in here, we had to think of another way to do it. So what we've done is made bracketry, which actually comes up, it sits against the tub. It doesn't use any strength from the tubs. So it's got bracketry which comes back down over the chassis rails, and it allows us to run our ARB up into the floor and also our coilover shock mounts. Not only that, it allows us to set our shocks up at the height we want them set up at, with the ride height we want set up, and make all of our ARB bracketry off of our diff so everything sits dead square, which in turn just saves time. So if you have a look at the way we've drawn everything, you can see the rear end in actual fact, and then so if you have a look, you can see the patchiness of the 3D scan. So we've really targeted this area here, and as it fades off, and then we've drawn everything else in there to suit. So now we know that everything's dead square looking from the back. We know that everything's dead square no matter which way you look at it, and we've still got room for our wishbone to come out the back here and be attached to the chassis rails. So coilovers are nice and straight, everything works. So now what we're going to do is send this over to the CNC. We'll cut all the bracketry, clean it all up, fold it, and then the next step is welding it into the car and setting it up. Now, when we do these scans, we always take telltales of things. So we've got factory notches and different things in the body that all of our bracketry lines up against. So when it goes into the car, it'll sit in perfectly.
So I've been over working on the Lexon. I've come over and the boys have been working away on the rear end of the car. They've cut all the rear shock brackets and that sort of thing, and I believe they've cut all the bracketry for up the top and for the anti-roll bar as well. And I understand that they've already run you through on the whole scanning part of it as well, which looks awesome. I mean, the way that they have 3D scanned this entire rear end and then built all the brackets in the computer and then cut it out on the plasma, I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, this is the way things are done now in a professional workshop, and it's certainly way above our level, but yeah, certainly very thankful that we have MPW to tap on to get all this fab work done. So, we're coming up on the weekend, and a lot of this stuff's going to happen off camera, so we're going to come back in, see what the boys have done over the weekend, and I think it's going to look awesome. But yeah, let's check back then and see how it all came together.
All right, since we last seen you guys, we have spent a couple of days on the rear end. So we've got all of the bracketry that we've seen us drawing in CAD. We've got it all cut, cleaned, and actually welded into the car. Now, the whole purpose of that, as we said, we would normally bar up that whole rear end. So we would normally run chromoly through, make kind of a subframe, stitch it all in. Because the rear end's already done in this car and we're actually extending upwards, we've done it out of sheet metal. So 3mm sheet, 5mm plate with all of the gussets, and it stitches to the inside of the tub, as you'll see. Now, it's not utilising the tub for anything. All of that bracketry holds onto the ARB and the coil over the shock mount. So now what we've done is we've gone and cut our mood ARB to length, and we've welded off the ends. Now I'm just about to stitch the arms on. So what we've done is we've measured where this goes to on the diff, and we're just about to stitch these on. Now the good thing about having our fixture tables is everything just comes up dead flat for us. So when we lay it out like this, we'll weld it together, we can clamp it down. With this we don't need to, but everything will just weld up all nice and round and dead flat for us. So I'll weld this off now, we'll transfer it back into the car, which will allow us to stick onto the diff housing, and then that's almost got the rear end done.
So I've ducked over to see how the boys are going the ute, and obviously they're doing big things with the diff. So Dave's about to weld in these ARB attachment points at the moment. You can see one is curved and one is flat. So the curved one goes around the axle tube, and because the diff being a 9" is kind of offset because the way the pinion position is in a 9". That side is flat because it goes against a flat edge. But yeah, that's where the anti-roll bar links are going to. They're actually going to go that way. So that way on that side, that one on this side. Yeah, anti-roll bar about to go in. Very exciting. So yeah, this is going to be mostly done today, which is awesome.
It is.
Adjustable. I like it. Double adjustable. Doubly like it. Very cool.
Hey guys, so that is the rear end all sitting up in place. Now, as you'll see, we haven't final welded anything. We like to test fit everything together before we final weld it. So I'm getting Dave to finish off the wishbone for us. So the reason we run a wishbone in a setup like this is because it's a sliding link on the rear of the diff. If we have a panhard bar, as the car separates, being a radial car, it'll actually move the diff over and back across in the car. So we want to keep it as dead square as possible. So we can either go with a track locator, which would just triangulate through here, or we can go with a wishbone. Personally, I like to run wishbones in them. So Dave's fitted up all of the ARB and fitted off all of the shocks for us. So the whole purpose of the anti-roll bar or ARB in this, it basically ties both sides of the car together. So as you launch, it'll launch dead even. So you'll notice a lot of cars that don't have anti-roll bars in them will twist up at the front. Now we can actually apply the power dead square through the car. So we'll get some wheels, some hubs onto it. We'll test fit everything up. Then we'll pull it apart for the final time, and we'll go through and do all the final welding, all the powder coating in-house. So we'll powder coat the diff housing, we'll powder coat all of the ARB and everything in-house, and then it gets the final fitment done to it. As you'll see, you've seen Abe, you've seen Dave, you've seen myself working on this. It's not just me that does all of this stuff down here. I'm just the poor bugger that's got to be on camera for it. So the whole team down here, we've got a pretty skilled selection of tradesmen down here that go through and do all of this. So it's a real team effort to get a build like this through at the quality that we do.
I have the Trident. With this, I can rule the 7 seas. No, now I'm going to give it to Dave and he can put it in the car. So I've been over working on the Lexon, but I thought I'd pop over and see what's going on. Obviously Dave is fitting the wishbone to the rear end, so we're pretty close there. And I thought I'd lend a hand by pressing in the studs to our strange floater kit that we've sourced from VPW. So it comes with instructions, it's all pretty straightforward. We've gone with 5/8 studs for big horsepower. And yeah, we're gonna dummy assemble the whole thing with bearings, but no grease for the moment, no grease or seals. Just so we don't dirty things up, because we're going to pull it all apart later anyway and then powder coat the whole thing. But we want to do a dummy assemble, make sure that the wheels fit in the right spots, make sure all that is right to go before we do the final welding on the hubs on the end of the axle tubes. But yeah, pretty comprehensive kit. It is pretty awesome. And yeah, I don't think we'll be breaking those anytime soon. I'll just point out one thing with these hubs, they are a multi-stud fitment, so make sure you've got the right stud pattern. We made sure we measured it first, but yeah, it does Chevy, I think it does Ford, and I think it does like an early Holden 4 1/4 stud pattern as well, so yeah, multi-purpose. Oh, that looks great.
Stop making those noises behind me, Scotty. It's freaking me out.
How good's that look? So there we have it. We have a rear end in our drag challenge ute. Wheels are up in there, looks awesome. So big shout out to Adam, Abe and Dave and all the team in fact for MPW. They've put some long hours into this beast and it is looking fantastic. We've got the track locator in there, so diff's all centered. Of course, there is some final details to finish off and then it's all got to come apart again so they can powder coat the rear end. But that's not going to happen on this episode, so you're going to see all that on future episodes of Carnage.